The wind was like a sorrowful ballad of forgotten things. It howled through the narrow, time-worn streets of the deserted village, echoing between the stone houses, crumbling between the teeth of time. Each structure, once a home to laughter and daily bustle, was now buried in silence, behind rusted doors, their falling roof tiles whispering a ghost of the past. In the midst of this deep, stifling silence, on the highest point of the village, stood a dilapidated stone house, its roof defeated by the relentless wind, challenging the desolation. Here lived Elder Yaşar. He was the village's last gasp of life, its last unextinguished hope, and its last watcher. Every morning, before the sun's first rays touched the grey stones with a golden whisper, Elder Yaşar would wake. He would peer out from his creaking wooden window at the curtain of mist draped over the valley's shoulders. Then he would slowly descend into his courtyard, seating himself on the wooden divan under the old grapevine, polished smooth by the passing years. As he sipped his dark, steaming coffee poured from a copper pot, his eyes were always fixed on the distance, specifically on the sharp bend in the village road. As if a silhouette might appear, or the sound of a carriage might be heard. In this village, once filled with the sounds of children, the bleating of flocks, and the songs of women, now only the spectre of the wind remained. Yet, every day, Elder Yaşar waited for someone with a certainty he kept hidden even from himself. No one knew who it was. Perhaps, burdened by the weariness years had placed upon his shoulders, he was now simply waiting for the act of waiting itself. When evening fell, a wholly different ritual began. Elder Yaşar would take the old lantern that stood in the corner, its handle rusted with years of moisture, its glass sooty. He would replenish the oil and light the wick, casting a tiny flickering flame onto the surroundings. Then, leaning on his cane, he would slowly make his way to the village square. Every step seemed to wake a memory from the village's past. The village square, once the place where young men wrestled and where halley dances were performed on holidays, was now a monument of silence, its stone well surrounded by moss. Yaşar Dede would place the lantern on the smooth, marble bench next to the stone well, sit down, and wait. Years ago, all the young people of the village had chased the promise of brighter lights in the cities. His sole son, strong and full of youthful excitement, had been among that exodus, gone for good. No letter, no voice, no news. The village had become the grave of hopes that would never return. But still, every evening, through the winter blizzards and the suffocating summer heat, he would light his lantern. Perhaps he'll lose his way. His dry lips would whisper, get lost in the city's chaos. When he sees my light, he'll say, there is my father's home, and he'll come back. This waiting had turned into a prolonged, arduous prayer. One morning, the sky over the village shed its usual gloom. In the deep blue emptiness, a flock of small, elegant silhouettes appeared. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of swallows circled above the village roofs with joyful cries, performing sharp, dizzying turns in the air. Elder Yaşar put his coffee cup on the divan and stood up, leaning on his cane. A smile, long forgotten and hidden within the wrinkles of his aged skin, spread across his face. So, you've returned, have you, my old friends? For the first time in years, he felt a spark of life, a movement within the desolate stone walls of his heart. The swallows, with surprising haste, began building their nests in the sheltered tile gaps of his half-ruined house. Every morning as he drank his coffee, he would listen to the cheerful chirping of the birds, feeling the ice of his loneliness melt away in this sweet commotion. The swallows whispered to him that every departure could be followed by a return. So someone can still come back, so the cycle of life hasn't ended. One day, during these days filled with fresh hope, an unfamiliar rumbling was heard from the village road. A dilapidated mail carriage, its engine coughing, chugged into the village square, enveloped in dust. An old postman, his face weathered by the wind, stepped out. In his hand was a yellowed envelope, its edges worn, its seal faded. "Well, I'll be," the postman muttered, looking around in surprise. It's been years, maybe more than a decade, since a letter last came to this dead village. Even the postal service had forgotten this address. The name on the envelope was written in shaky letters. Yaşar Demir. Elder Yaşar's calloused. Bony hands trembled as he took the envelope. His fingertips felt the weight of years in the paper's texture. He slowly opened it. The letter was short, written in old, faded ink. It was from his son. The son who had left the village years ago, who had never returned, whose voice he hadn't heard. He read it. The letter was brief. It carried a farewell, a confession, a secret. "Dearest father, if you find this letter, know that I can no longer come home. The city consumed me too, took my strength. But I made you a promise, father. I am keeping my word. If the swallows fly in the village every spring, if they nest on our roof, know that I am there. I return to you on the wing of those birds, in that chirping." After reading the letter, Elder Yaşar remained silent for a long, very long time. His shoulders slumped, his cane slipping from his hand. This was the end of the waiting. It was neither a bitter end nor a joyful reunion. His son had come to him on the wing of a bird, in the turn of a season. The cheerful sound of the swallows mingled with the hot, elderly tears that dropped onto the letter. That evening, as the sun set behind the valley painted in red, Elder Yaşar lit his lantern again in the square. But this time, it was not for his famous, hopeful vigil. He had a tired, peaceful thank you to offer. He placed the lantern on the stone bench but did not sit down. In the middle of the square, as the lantern's weak, yellow light flickered in the wind, a shadow glided down from the sky. A swallow, like the vanguard of the entire flock, came and landed right on the lantern's iron hoop. A small black silhouette. "Welcome home, my son," Elder Yaşar whispered, his voice barely audible. A deep, serene smile of a man who has found his life's final peace was on his face. He slowly closed his eyes. He leaned his body against the centuries-old stone bench. The lantern continued to burn despite the wind's best efforts. The next morning, when the sun rose over the sleeping roofs of the village was quiet. But the swallows on the roof were more numerous than ever, their chirping like a spring symphony. Passers-by who walked past Elder Yaşar's house saw his coffee cup still half full on the courtyard divan. And from that day forward, every spring when the swallows returned, the people of the village noticed a small, flickering light burning by the stone well in the square. A light that even the strongest winds could not extinguish. No one lit that light, no one placed a lantern there, but everyone knew Elder Yaşar was still there, with his son, as the village's guardian, the eternal light of the last lantern.